Welcome back to another day of 31 Days of Horror. I'm your host, Stephen Bloodworth, filmmaker and indie film critic. Thank you so much for coming by. We are officially in a new millennium, the 2000s. For this year's 31 Days of Horror, I have covered a lot of serious and nasty horror films, so today I figured I'd go with one a lot more lighthearted and intended for young audiences. As a kid growing up in the 90s, one of my favorite shows of all time was Kenan and Kel. The show is a sitcom from Nickelodeon and stars young Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell always getting into different kinds of trouble and trying to save the day. Ken Foree, who plays Kel's punching bag Mr. Rockmore in the show, is known by horror fans from Dawn of the Dead, Devil's Rejects, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, as well as several other horror films. Two Heads Are Better Than None was the last episode of Kenan and Kel and was made into a made-for-TV movie. The film starts off with the Rockmore family going on vacation and trying to sneak Kel along. Kenan and his younger sister Kyra decide to hide him in the car. Eventually, Mr. Rockmore discovers Kel in the back of the car, and they realize that they just have no choice but to take him with them. On the first night on the road, the group decides to camp out where Roger begins telling a scary story. Being scared by it, Kenan decides to leave the campfire and go looking for firewood. While looking, Kenan babbles about seeing a headless knight out in the woods. And also there's a husband and wife known as the Shelleys who end up startling the family and asks them if they have any ketchup. This happens to be a running gag throughout the film because every time the Rockmores or Kel sees any of the Shelleys, they always bring up the fact that they loaned them some ketchup and they are beyond grateful.
I didn't mean to startle you. I was wondering, can I trouble you for some ketchup?
Thank you again for the ketchup. Thanks again for the ketchup. Hello!
Hey, it's our ketchup buddies.
Now tell me, if you were on vacation or hiking through the woods or camping and people came to you, what do you think they'd be asking you for? Probably some money, gas, a telephone, a place to stay? No, ketchup. The next day they discover a tourist trap, go inside, and discover that Kenan was telling the truth because there just happens to be the Headless Knight. The story of the Headless Knight goes that the knight lost his head in a battle, and he's living out in some town named Rockville. Well, eventually their car breaks down, and they discover that the next town over is Rockville. The film has all the cliché stereotypes of any horror film. The old man urging them not to go into the town, the creepy haunted house, and everything creepy about this haunted house is in the film. A creepy butler, which just so happens to be played by Michael Berryman. Weird oil paintings of the owner of the house, which Kel just makes fun of and calls ugly.
Hey, Kenan, come here. What? Look at this paint. What about it? Man, he's ugly. Well, yeah, I guess he's not pretty.
And the house having no phone. But here's one thing they did differently with this house, because instead of a creepy knocker or a doorbell, it actually gives off a pretty cheerful tune.
No, don't ring the doorbell. It's scared.
Not exactly the ring I'd expect this house to have.
Kel thinks it's cheerful, but Kenan thinks it's downright creepy. This is a film made specifically for children and preteens. So the next time you go on a road trip or go camping in the woods, you might want to have some ketchup with you. Trust me, it might come in handy.